Massachusetts, PHENOM, and I'd like to welcome you here today. Thanks for coming. Who's excited to fight for public higher education? Thank you, James, for starting introductions. Lindy Reed, the UMass Lowell Student Trustee, is also going to be doing some co-emceeing. And I'd also like to thank all of the college presidents, President Meehan, the State University presidents, the community college presidents for working together with us on making this day happen. And I'd like to thank President Jamie Burge from the Mass College of Liberal Arts, who is here today. So thank you to all of them. So I can't see all of you, which is actually a little nerve-wracking. But I'd like to kind of frame the event and think about why we're here. I think a lot of us are here because we can't afford to go to college, because the buildings on our campuses are crumbling, some of them are very new, some of them are falling apart. We're here because the staff and faculty we work with every day are overworked and underpaid. And we're here because the state has cut funding for our public colleges and universities by billions of dollars. Since 1980, and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars since 2001. And there was a report last week that came out from the Massachusetts Budget Policy Center that said that Massachusetts has gone from the second lowest student debt burden for students in public higher education to the 10th highest in the last 10 years. Well, a little over that, 12 years. Student debt is skyrocketing, and I think that's why we're here today, because we know that we can't take it and we can't afford it. And the other reason why we're here is because Beacon Hill needs to step up and lead on this issue. Most states are putting together these promise programs, the New York Promise. It's good to see states taking a step on this. Those programs are last dollar programs. You still have to take out loans even if you get that program. It just covers the gap, maybe $1,000 or $2,000. And it doesn't actually solve the problem, which is that your average graduate is leaving with $30,000 in student debt from a public college or university in Massachusetts. And, that's what we're seeing too. The funding isn't there behind some of the programs that are happening now, the Commonwealth Commitment, the Boston Bridge, some of the programs that the Department of Higher Ed is trying to help people afford college, but we need to put a lot more money into it than, $5-7 million. We need $500 million just as a start, just to get going. So, thank you. So we can do better. We can do a first dollar program here that covers all of your tuition and fees on the front end, so you don't have to take out loans, so you're not forced to take out loans just to get a college education. And we want to go back to the reality where you can actually work a summer job at a reasonable number of hours and afford to go to college. What that means is a debt-free future, and that's the theme of today, that we're fighting for a debt-free future for students and families in Massachusetts. What we do now, what we can always do is campuses can fund, we can fund our campuses. This building, Beacon Hill, can fund our public college campuses in this year's budget. They can pass the Finish Line grant this year. They can pass a student loan borrower's Bill of Rights to protect you this year. And I don't know how many of you know this, but some of our college faculty, adjunct faculty, they don't even have access to health insurance and retirement benefits. And they can pass a bill to fix that this year. So that's what we're here fighting for this year. And we also know that that's not enough. Just the things we can do right now are not enough. We have to do some stuff next spring and this fall, too. On the ballot, there's going to be a Fair Share Millionaires Tax Amendment in November. It's going to tax millionaires to fund public education and public transportation. And I think in all your packets you can find that we, the community, the 29 public colleges and universities in Massachusetts, we're asking for $500 million from that ballot question. And that gets us a start. That gets us along the way to actually moving to a debt-free future. And we're also asking for some student debt forgiveness for those of us who went through the system already. It's not just about future students and current students. If there's any alumni in here paying back student loans, we need to do something about that too. Or families, or parents, or other people paying back student loans. We need to get that fixed. So at the end of the day, a debt-free future can't happen on the backs of our workers and on our campuses and on our buildings. We can't make college debt free but not give adjuncts access, not keep adjuncts away from benefits like healthcare. We can't have more staff members doing the work of 2 people when they used to be doing the work of 1 person, because that means that students are waiting. Students don't have access to the resources that they need. Students can't get the classes that they need to graduate. They have to come back for another year. I know a lot of folks have experienced that. And, you know, we can't just be contracting things out either to low-paid workers. Those jobs should be good jobs. At the end of the day, we decide. The students and the faculty and the staff of our campuses decide. If we stand up, there's 500 people in this room. If you all talk to 10 people, that's 5,000 people calling their legislators, calling this building and saying, we want a real debt-free future. We want a real reinvestment in public higher education. We decide. And we've already decided that we want a real debt-free future for students with funds for faculty and staff to fix our crumbling buildings, and not just $7 million. $7 million that has been proposed, maybe that would have worked 20 years ago, but it's 20 years short and, you know, $500 million short. So we're asking for something real debt-free future policies. Today, I'm going to talk a little about what we're doing. We're fighting for that debt-free future by pushing lawmakers to pass the laws that can help today that I already talked about, and to be coming back in January and talking about the Fair Share Amendment and really funding public higher education. We need you to join us on the streets and on the phones and on your campuses to make that happen. We need you to come to meetings and do phone banks and canvass, and if you do that, if everyone in this room did that, nobody else, just us, we would win. Just us. So, being here today makes you a part of a debt-free future. It makes you part of that future. And I think we all know, as we've seen from the Parkland students, that when young people lead, young people win. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for leading. Thank you for leading. And thank you for advocating for public higher education. The one other thing I want to say before I turn it over is that today is and very well could have been a day of national shame, when our DACA brothers and sisters were forced to go back into the shadows by this administration in Washington. And the courts luckily have stopped that temporarily, but we need to be thinking about that, and we need to do something in this building for that too. We're in a tough time, but if people like us come together and fight back, we can get out of this and we can win. Thank you very much. Now, a little out of order, I'm going to introduce now Representative John Syback, the House Chair of the Higher Education Committee, to say a few words.
How many of you here are students who have no debt? I see 3 hands. I was fortunate to graduate with no debt. But today is a different situation, a different scenario. People who come to this Commonwealth and go to our public institutions should get the same opportunities, should have the same rights, should get the same benefits as people do in other states and in some of the private institutions. So how do we do that? Zach gave a laundry list. It's a huge laundry list. So let's take some of the things in order. I'm going to save debt for last. Let's look at the adjuncts. I was an adjunct at UMass Amherst. I was an adjunct at Westfield State. I didn't get health insurance because I didn't need it because I had another job. But there are so many adjuncts and that's their only job. If you want quality people who are teaching you, then we have to give them a quality job, and that includes benefits, and that includes health insurance. And we will be submitting a bill. We will pass a bill out of our committee that will provide health insurance to adjuncts so that those people don't leave and don't essentially leave you behind. We will provide health insurance. I was first elected in 2002. In 2003, I went to the UMass Amherst campus. Max, you were there. And I listened to a situation where collective bargaining agreement had been ratified, had been passed, and in essence, the faculty were still waiting for years 2 and 3 of that contract. I think we're now at the point where the faculty at our institutions need to know, and we need to honor those contracts and fully fund collective bargaining agreements right from the start, and not have institutions take them out of their budget which means that's less money for financial aid, that's less money for the university and the college campuses to put toward improving their facilities. And so besides the debt service, you need to also advocate for those faculty to make sure that they're getting paid the salary they should be paid, because a deal is a deal and we shouldn't break the deal. I talked to people at private universities. I've talked to presidents of private campuses here in Massachusetts and said, well, we discount tuition by 60% or 70%. We're able to do that. They're able to do that because they have the ability to fund it through their existing budgets, which is not happening in the state system. The reality is, if you're going to UMass, if you're going to our state universities, if you're going to our community colleges, you're staying here in Massachusetts. 75 to 85% of you people will stay here for your entire working career. You will pay back 5, 10, 20-fold what we're talking about, and we have an obligation, a moral obligation to provide that to you and ensure that you get the best quality of life that's possible, because it improves our commonwealth. And so I appreciate you being here, and I think you need to get that message across to the legislators you're going to meet with. You also... You also have a fundamental right to go to school in a place we don't have to worry about bricks falling off a library building, which happened years ago, a parking garage that is crumbling, or sitting in a chemistry lab that really Marie Curie might have worked in a century ago. The time is right for us. If we truly are going to be number one in education, we have to be number one, not just in terms of the quality of faculty that we have, the students that we attract, but we have to be number one in terms of the facilities that are there, and so we have to expand and increase our capital funding. But here's our dilemma. So last year we heard about the Affordable Care Act, and the people in Washington looking to repeal that. If the Republicans in Washington were successful in repealing the Affordable Care Act, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 300,000 people in Massachusetts would have lost their health insurance. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts would have lost over $2 billion in funding. That's 5% of our budget. We can't afford to do the increases that we're talking about if we're looking at losing 5% of our budget. We can't afford to do the increases we're talking about if a ballot question passes that reduces the sales tax by 1%. We can't afford to do the things that we're talking about if the Fair Share Amendment doesn't pass. So, you have an obligation today to educate every one of my colleagues in terms of how important this is. But your challenge in your education doesn't end today. You need to go back home. You need to talk to your parents. You need to talk to your relatives. You need to talk to your friends and your neighbors and tell them that unless that Fair Share Amendment passes, unless the sales tax stays where it is, unless those individuals call their legislators just like you're doing today, what we're talking about is simply a dream. And it shouldn't become a dream. Because if it doesn't happen, then the notion of debt-free college isn't a dream, but continues to be a nightmare. So do not go home today thinking that your task is over by talking to my colleagues who I work with. You need to talk to everyone else. We need to demonstrate in November that the Fair Share Amendment passes overwhelmingly, that the attempt to reduce the sales tax is rejected overwhelmingly, and that all those people you talk to need to have a purple sign that says public college should not be a debt sentence. You need to remind those people who were my generation, who graduated from college with little or minimal debt, that today is different. I don't want people abandoning our public institutions for a private institution somewhere else, or to be poached by some neighboring state saying, we'll give you in-state tuition, we'll give you financial aid, because that's not good for Massachusetts, for our Massachusetts institutions. I am proud of the system that we have. I'd be even prouder of the system we have if we fund this. So we're going to move forward. We are going to address the issue in terms of debt-free and look at it in a number of ways. There is the Fair Share Amendment. There are a number of other possibilities. Thanks to Representative Higgins, who filed the